Shannon's a certified rehabilitation counselor, a certified integrative mental health professional, and a MAPS approved psychedelic integration provider. And she's also an adjunct professor at Drake University. So welcome, Shannon. I'm glad you could be with us. Thanks for taking the time for this interview. I guess my first question is, did I miss anything in your introduction?
I do a lot of things, but that's all the same thing, right? Like I'm a former Harkin Fellow, research fellow, and that is still about people with disabilities. And I'm a Reiki master teacher. I'm also a member of the American Center for Spiritually Transformative Experiences and a systems change consultant and coach.
Okay, great. Great, sounds good. I knew I missed something, but I wanted to start off because I think for me at least, and probably for a lot of people who are here, the most interesting part of what you are doing is the psychedelic integration therapy. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to ask why psychedelics? What are they? Why do you think they're important in regard to counseling?
Right. So I'm the only MAPS approved integration practitioner in Iowa and for about the 7 surrounding states. So I've been a MAPS integration professional for the last 3 years. And I came through psychedelic work through it's part of integrative medicine for mental health. So altered states of consciousness are part of my clinical training. It's part of my ancestral practice. It was part of my healing. I had like treatment resistant OCD and PTSD, and I had physical autoimmunity, some health symptoms that were very debilitating. And it was a life or death situation for myself that I came to take psychedelics very seriously. And with that, it was just, it's my personal experience meets my clinical experience. This is quite honestly my life purpose to do this work. It's what my special interests are. It's where my expertise are. And I love this work. I have always loved serving like misunderstood populations, marginalized populations, and I've done that throughout all of the different ways that I've served folks in our state. And psychedelics are, drug use is very misunderstood. Ancient spiritual sacraments are very misunderstood, especially with the manufactured war on drugs, where we have a lot of misinformation around psychedelics. And so I'm here to educate and inform, which I've been doing for the past couple years, and decriminalize nature. And so it's a little bit about my why. Psychedelics are both plant-based medicines that have been here since the beginning on the land, that have been tended by indigenous folks. And so there's different types of psychedelics, and the main body that kind of regulates and is doing the research is MAPS. And so if we haven't gotten to know MAPS, the MAPS stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. So MAPS has been around since the 80s, since when I've been around. And so they're validating through clinical research psychedelic studies. MDMA just got approved, FDA approval for PTSD. They're doing some really exciting research on disordered eating, social anxiety with autism, and some other things. And that's all on the website there. Ketamine, obviously we have ketamine clinics in the state of Iowa. So ketamine assisted therapy is wonderful for PTSD, anxiety, depression, OCD, suicidality. So there's a lot of, you want to match up the psychedelic with the mental health state, like first and foremost. So that's coming from the harm reduction model. So, any MAPS approved psychedelic integration professional is going to come from, we're not only trauma informed and healing centered, but we also are using the harm reduction model, which doesn't pathologize drug use. We're essentially meeting every client where they're at, because we know that drug use is a part of the human condition. It's very normal. And if you want to look into some of the work of Dr. Carl Hart from Harvard in the psychology department, he is the Harvard professor that uses heroin and normalizes it. And there's a ton of articles out there. So some other things, just if you haven't read anything about psychedelics, Michael Pollan's got a couple books out. This is Your Mind on Plants and How to Change Your Mind. Wonderful. And then I've got some old text, psychedelic text here that I'm going to hold up. Some of them are really hard to get, but the Psychedelic Reader. So Timothy Leary, this is a wonderful text. Breaking Open the Head. Here's one on ayahuasca and tripping. I love this one. This has a lot of stories in it. And probably one of my favorites is about Carlos Castaneda's The Teaching of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge. And so this talks about the absolute reverence and respect that a shaman takes into studying their plant allies. And this is kind of getting lost in the sauce with now, you know, indigenous folks and shamans and have been tending these medicines since the beginning and taking a lot of respect and care for the medicines and lands and the way that these medicines are used. And that is at a big contrast with what's being done like in a ketamine clinic in Iowa today. So I point this out because if you haven't read something like this and you haven't taken the due diligence to understand your plant ally that you're using, you might want to circle back around.
Okay, well, you just said a lot there, Shannon. But
I said a lot.
one thing that I wanted to circle back on was you said that you spoke to there are misconceptions about what psychedelics are, and what they do. So could you elaborate more on what the misconceptions that you see around psychedelics and their use?
So one of the biggest misconceptions is like on the client or patient side, just to think that psychedelics are a quick fix. So that's kind of a misconception. Psychedelics may require you to do the most work you have ever done on your healing. They can confront your conditioning, every concept that you've ever had, how you were raised, your religion, your gender, and they may bring up not only your trauma, but ancestral and collective traumas, depending on what psychedelic you're using. And so in our culture, because a lot of these medicines come from cultures and indigenous communities where there was a lot of understanding around how the medicines were used, and then that contrasts with our culture in America, where it's like a quick fix. Like we come from it from the pharmaceutical perspective of, I'm going to take this pill and I'm going to feel better tomorrow. I'm not going to do any work. It's very passive. You doctor are going to heal me and tell me what I need to do, versus psychedelics are only the catalyst to bring about your own internal healer that already exists within. But that's also paired with the setting, the intention, how the medicines has been tended, you know, how much pre-work that you've put into your trauma healing. You know, we have to really, really slow it down and be very intentional with these medicines. And so there's a big misunderstanding as to, well, I want to feel better tomorrow. And no, you may go on a psychedelic journey, and from that one trip, it may take you years, quite honestly, for things to kind of fall into place. And it's active. It's a million micro steps of changes that is best done when it is guided, when it is guided with someone that is keeping you safe, that is supporting you, that there's a community where it's normalized, people that you can talk to, and those types of things. Otherwise, folks are left to do this on their own. and it's not normalized, and they don't have, you know, if you've experienced cosmic unity consciousness, right, and like your friends and family have no idea how what that even is, and you're questioning all these concepts, you know, your worldview is changing in the process. It can look like a lot of mental health conditions, but it's not. It's a spiritual emergence that's happening. And with some conversations and some somatic body-based tools, you know, folks can be very much supported. But our culture doesn't understand it. So that's the other side of things is our culture. So many mental health professionals, and I'm so glad that some are attending, do not understand psychedelics at all. And so they are villainized as drugs, and people are shamed. People are diagnosed with substance use disorders, and then they are not supported. Their mental health maybe gets worse. So they feel like they stop going to therapy altogether. They're like, my therapist doesn't understand me. And the therapist isn't looking at the research that's available. They're not getting supported. And so we really have to, you know, like we've done with alcohol, when alcohol was made legal, now when things are made illegal and decriminalized, then that comes in a space for us to educate on what are the uses, how is this safe? Because in other cultures, children start with psychedelics at age 13, and you know, in South America, it's very normalized. This is just part of the culture, and they, you know, they go on vision quests, and it's very normalized. And here we don't even have any concept of what that is, what an altered state of consciousness even means, and the amount of time and care that it takes to really integrate these transformational experiences.
I wanna kind of break down a little bit. Maybe take it from up here to down here. So what are psychedelics? And also, you've used terms like transformational experiences or trips, or could you put that into a little more context, like what these are? Kind of.
Yeah, so psychedelics include entheogens, which are plant-based, like a magic mushroom, like a mushroom that is going to alter your consciousness, and depending on the dose, depends on how much it's going to be altered in the setting, all needs to be put into place. But then there's also man-made psychedelics, like LSD is man-made, that also alters consciousness in another way. So it's the chemical compound that alters our brain states into different experiences of ultimate reality, ultimate states of consciousness, much like kind of like meditation does, but in a way that is very specific to the compound that you're taking, and also your history and your mental and your neurotransmitter makeup, right? Because some certain folks, if they're taking one psychedelic versus another, depending on their mental health state, they're going to have a much different outcome than someone that doesn't have a mental health condition. Psychonauts, for example, folks that just experiment with different psychedelics just to kind of go for the experience versus the healing.
So I've gotten some questions beforehand with this interview about practicalities around your practice, and what does this look like when you do psychedelic integration therapy? There's concerns about is what you're doing illegal? Is this ethical? How do you make it ethical? Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, so psychedelic integration is legal, it is ethical, and for me, it is moral. So it's legal because we're not doing psychedelics together. Psychedelic use has either not happened, or someone is planning on at some future point going to happen. So it's not happening in my office. I am not sitting with anyone. I'm not guiding anyone. Just like if someone had drank a beer the night before, like we're not drinking we're talking about how was drinking that beer, or how was, you know, whatever that was the night before, how is that working for you? And so it's not happening in my office. I'm not facilitating the use of it at all. So it's legal. So just like with harm reduction, so it's planning for, a lot of the times on the front side of a journey, planning so that someone is has the least likely of harm to occur. So for example, maybe someone is saying, Shannon, I have depression. I've tried all of the different medications. I've tried all of these things. I'm thinking about heading to, I'm thinking about going on a psychedelic healing experience. Okay, so let's talk about this. So I have either virtual sessions or in-person sessions, depending on what the client prefers and where they're located. And so we're doing an intake, like everyone does an intake as to, you know, what are the root causes perhaps of the depression, what medications is the person using, etc. So given that information in itself, and say they are taking medication. Well, medications usually are contraindicated with psychedelic use. So I am making sure that I get them to an integrated psychiatrist or a pharmacist. So spirit pharmacist Ben Malcolm, he does psychedelic consultations as far as to how someone can slowly get off their medication so that they can plan for a successful psychedelic study. And MAPS does this as well with the research. They help folks get off. And so if my client is going into a MAPS trial, it's talking with them, well, let's get you into MAPS and let's start talking about what that looks like for you. And so it's always about harm reduction because we want the highest outcomes. I want to keep people safe and making sure that they're supported. And another thing on the front side is, like, if you've never tried therapy before, let's see if we can, you know, do that in the meantime, right? Because I want to make sure that that's part of the healing is going to therapy. Part of what happens with the integration is actually doing the work. And so, well, I've never been to therapy before. And then part of that is like destigmatizing therapy. Well, have you thought about EMDR? Have you thought about equine assisted therapy? Have you thought about integrative medicine for mental health? Like, oh, no, I haven't. Well, did you know that a lot of the times, like, gluten is a common, a gluten intolerance is very, very common with depression. And so maybe we can think about going gluten-free for a little bit to see if maybe that's the reason why. Let's look at the medications. Have you done a pharmacogenomic panel to make sure that the right medication and the right dosage is matching up with their mental health state? So on the front side, I'm making sure that someone is very supported. Do you have a support system in place? Okay, if all of these things are matching up, and if they, then we're seeing, well, where are they going to do it? Are you going to do it with a research study? Are you going out of state? Are you doing this above ground? Are you doing it underground? If you're doing underground, what's going on there? I'm very interested in that. Because folks, are you doing it on your own? Are you going out of the country? Are you visiting a church? Because they're church that have legal status for sacrament, sacred medicines. I'm determining what's going on. What is your trauma history? What is your experience of, have you used any psychedelics or cannabis in the past? What was that like for you? Do you have any mental health conditions in your family? So we're not doing anything. I'm not sending them there. I actually cannot. I can't refer anyone to any underground provider. I can refer them to like a ketamine clinic for sure. And those types of things. And so I'm making a lot of bridges. I'm contacting different providers and making sure that everyone's safe. I'm understanding the protocols, because they might say, well, I'm looking at this place, you know, maybe out in Eastern Iowa, or I'm looking at this place in Colorado. I'm looking at this place in Costa Rica. I'm considering doing this, you know, with a trip sitter. And so I'm making sure on the front side that someone is the most supported, that their intention, that their expectation, like they're not, you know, trying to do the largest dose, just to be like, that's the best, right? Like making sure that they're going to be as safe as possible and giving them the most information, not only with psychedelics, but also with integrative medicine, with pharmaceutical medications, making sure like that's safe. I'm getting them to the experts on the front side. Okay, so there's the front side of the pre-planning of psychedelic integration therapy. on the backside. So this person, let's say this whole front end process may take years. It may take years. Maybe they're going to therapy. Maybe they're removing gluten from their diet. Maybe we're getting them into a functional medicine doctor to see if they have, some type of gut infection, or maybe it's a methylation pattern, or maybe it was the medications that they were on. We're determining all that on the front side of things. And then if they do decide to move forward with psychedelics therapy some other place, because I don't do that, nor will I ever do that piece. That is for psychedelic integration therapists, which is different than this, is what we're talking about. So people don't understand that at all. And so I don't do that piece, nor will I ever. So on the backside of, maybe they go through a research study, or they're going to Costa Rica or Jamaica, or maybe they went to a church, maybe a shaman came to their suburb. I don't know. Maybe they did their own journey. Maybe they went to Colorado, maybe. On the backside of it, then well, what came up in the journey? How was it for you? A lot of times I see it when journeys, I call journeys psychedelic therapies, because it is a journey of consciousness that's expanded outside of ordinary reality. So that's just my term for it. And a lot of us in the field just refer to it as journeys. So on the backside, we're integrating that, which can kind of look like transpersonal. Therapists will understand this, like depth psychology, the symbolism, our soul, our psyche speaks in a lot of symbolism, and like, what was that? What were the symbols? Maybe someone was stuck in a loop, like what was going on there? What was a loop? Because psychedelics tend to be non-specific amplifiers, meaning it just amplifies anything that's in your awareness, but like a lot, like very, very loud. Like if you have intrusive thoughts during the day, then your psychedelic experience, someone may be in a loop of something, and that they may have occurred a trauma in the psychedelics, and they may have gone out of the country, and it's a cultural mismatch. A lot of these clients are going to ayahuasca ceremonies that are not in English. The healing's done in groups. Maybe someone there is a veteran with complex trauma, and they were having a really rough experience. And so that it's kind of like spiritual soup is what I call it. Like everything kind of just gets mixed up together, and it becomes just this conglomeration of like, wow, that was too much, Shannon. And I'm having a hard time. And so a lot of traumas can get endured because of psychedelics. Because sometimes I won't have talked to them on the front side. I've been like, what are you doing down there? That's not going to work for you. And so they're coming back, and a lot of it is half the time they've incurred a new trauma because of the psychedelic. The front end of the journey planning, harm reduction wasn't done, or on the backside it's just integrating, like, well, what came up? Okay, so you re-experienced a trauma of your childhood, and you were able to experience this from a state of unconditional love. Like maybe they saw their abuser as a child and they experienced that, and so they're kind of just processing through that. And then some individuals their experience may have been so transformational that they really have to change everything in their life. They're going to have to change their job, they're going to move, they're going to leave their spouse, they're going to change what they're eating, their religion has changed, they're now Buddhist. They're going to become a Reiki practitioner or something. They're going from insurance to Reiki or whatever that is. And so it's integrating these transformational experiences as well, because even within the same journey, it can be equal parts terror and equal parts transcendental. And a lot of it's grounding folks. A lot of folks are coming to me from ketamine clinics, and they're depersonalized, they're dissociated, and they're derealized. We've got ketamine clinics here that are not trauma informed. They're not explaining cosmic consciousness. Ketamine is a strong dissociative, and folks are strapped in, left in a cold room. The facilitator leaves, and they are gone. They are gone. They're in cosmic conscissness, infinite soup, and they come back, and they're like, oh my God, like no one's explaining anything. They're just like, is your driver here? And they're like, no one's explaining any of it. They're not back in their body. Their ego is totally dissolved. They were the universe for the last infinite time is gone. It's a construct, it's gone. And then someone comes back into this cold room, unstraps them, and they're like, is your driver here? And so that doesn't work either, but that's happening in our state. That is happening. Someone is going to go through that experience tomorrow in Iowa. Yeah. And so it's dealing with all of this, trying to keep everybody safe on the front end, and on the back end, dealing with whatever is coming up. It could be a new trauma. It could be, hey, I'm leaving everything I know because I am deconstructing all of these concepts and my worldview has changed. Their degree of openness can go from, in one setting, or, in one session, of like 50% openness to like 85. And the person's like, well, I'm not doing what I've been doing my whole life because it doesn't make sense. And I have new awareness into my patterns. And Shannon, can you help me break down this process? Yeah, it's all of that.
All of that.
Yes.
I wanted to speak to some questions that have come up in the chat. And I just lost the one that I want. Some people have been asking if you can post some links to the books that you recommend for beginners. And somebody asked, Katrina asked if you could speak to medical providers that help with the medication piece.
So it's tough with the medication piece because, as you all know, therapists in the chat and patients that are receiving mental health medication support, the hardest part with medication changes is because it has to be the prescriber that is prescribing that medication. Okay. And so when we have to get them on board and educate. So I'm always advocating with my clients, like, if you need to have me talk with your provider, I'm always offering that. Sometimes I'm zoomed in, they will, not through Zoom, but through a HIPAA compliant platform. I use Doxy. Am advocating for that. Sometimes we have to get them into an integrative psychiatrist to change the medications. Sometimes we have to get them into a pharmacist to change the medications. And sometimes we have to even start with the basics, like doing a pharmacogenomic panel, just to be like, is the medications that you are currently on causing the adverse events? And so my preferred pharmacogenomic provider, telehealth provider, is Genome Medical. And so it works much easier if you have the doctor that is prescribing on board, that is doing the pharmacogenomic panel. Genome Medical is going to select the correct panel given all of the medications the person is on and their ICD-10 codes, their diagnosis codes, and they're going to run that up against the genome. And so they're going to say what medications and which doses are safe and which are unsafe, going to cause adverse events, meaning mental health crises, because a lot of times it's the mental health medications that are causing the mental health symptoms when the person genetically can't take them. I'm a person, I cannot take mental health medications at all. I genetically cannot. And that's why I practice this type of medication. I get all of the side effects and none of the benefits. And so I treat my OCD naturally with things like B vitamins, inositol, N-acetylcysteine, fish oil, and it works out really well. But, had I not known that, I would have kept trying and trying and trying and getting worse. And so, that is step one, is making sure when I leave this plane of existence, I want for every child born to have their entire genome synthesized at birth, and that is put into someone's medical records, and no child is ever given the wrong medication and the wrong dosage in their lifetime that is turning on epigenetic levers later on. That exists, that technology exists right now. For $400, our entire genome can be scanned, and this information can be put into our medical records. I've done extensive work on pharmacogenomics in my past, and this medical technology exists, and we should be using it as first line, not you know, not 5-10 years later after multiple mental health crises, we should be doing the first time we prescribe, the first time someone is prescribed, the first time someone is diagnosed, before any script is written for anything, we should be using pharmacogenomic testing. So that has to start step one, okay? Because when we get the right medication, right dosage, mental health symptoms are going to resolve, right? Like they're going to resolve with the therapy and the extra supports and the integrative wraparound services and the tools that we have in existence today. And so if that's not happening, then it's an opportunity. I mean, because if it's being missed, then therefore it's an opportunity. So that's step one. And the other thing that we can do is get them into an open psychiatrist. And there's at least 2 integrative psychiatrists in Iowa right now. And I know there's one that's very interested, because I have a lot of doctors and a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of therapists that are messaging me behind the channels like, Shannon, I'm kind of scared about doing this because it's kind of terrifying. I am misunderstood every day. I'm misunderstood right now in this conversation. Someone's like, I don't know what this woman is talking about. And I still take the risk to do legal and ethical and moral things every day, because clinicians across the country are doing the same thing. And in California, no one would even be listening to me because I would be a dime a dozen. You know, in our state, it just seems as like, oh, what is she talking about? This is very normal on the coast. This is integrative psychiatry has been doing this, and there are integrated psychiatry clinics all across the country that are already doing this.
Yeah, and I wanted to get some clarity around that. So I hear you talking a lot about pharmacogenomics, and I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what that is correctly. So it sounds like that's looking at somebody's genome, their genetics, and using research based on their genome about which medications are going to be effective in helping them with whatever diagnosis they might have. So
it's precision medicine. Think of it like precision medicine. Okay. So it's not just like, I've got a headache, I'm going to take aspirin. I actually can't genetically take aspirin because of my genetics. Okay. So I use that example. So it's precision medicine that is prescribed for your genome. So pharmacogenomics simply are matching up gene to gene, medication to medication, and gene to medication, and all of that existing together within there are actually 5 rates in which medications are metabolized. And typically we're given a medication right here, standard dosage. Okay, so Sean, you come in and you have you're having some anxiety. Okay, so I'm going to prescribe you with a Xanax, and this is a typical dosage right here in the middle. Well, there's actually 5 ways that people metabolize a medication. Some folks are just like a normal metabolizer. Some folks are ultra rapid metabolizers of that medication. So they need a higher dosage, because it's just like your friend that like can drink a lot of caffeine and coffee and they can just go right to sleep, because that's actually a genetic type. So there's ultra rapid, there's normal, then there's low and ultra low metabolizing. So like an ultra low is someone that needs like a small dose and is going to have the same outcome as this ultra rapid metabolizer. So that's part of it. So that's with the dosage, but our genes come into play too as well. So someone may be like, oh, I can't take this benzo, but I can take this one, or I can't take benzos at all given my genetics, and I actually have to take a whole different class for my anxiety diagnosis, and it's going to give that information. And they color code their reports. I mean, they're very easy to read, and most of these labs that are doing these reports, they're all FDA approved. They're going to give a pharmacist is going to come on the phone, and your doctor, even if it's a new lab for them, they're going to describe this for your doctor in great detail. They're super easy to read. And ultimately, you know, the best case scenario is nothing ever happens, meaning a medical event never happens. That's the best case scenario, right? Like a medication safety protocol. But a lot of times for mental health medications, it can be life-saving for someone to not go through the agony and the trauma of trying out another mental health medication that's going to put them into a crisis after they've had to try in trial and error after trial and error with medications. I mean, that's a medical trauma that happens. I see day after day, clients come to me and they're just shaking. They're just like, Shannon, I can't do another medication change. I can't go through that again. And they're in fight or flight or freeze in some kind of a trauma response, just thinking about just their medication changes, because it can be so horrifying for some people just with the side effects. It's a trauma. Medical trauma is a thing. Medication changes are a thing. And so there's something that's in existence right now that is used all across the country as standard treatment of care that we should be utilizing.
And I think, so I feel like we've gone into the realm of integrated medicine, and you are a certified integrative mental health provider. Am I getting that right?
Yes, I'm a certified integrative medicine mental health practitioner. Yes, it's a long name.
Practitioner. So, and there are some specific questions in the chat that relate to that, but before we go into that, what does that mean? What kind of
does that mean?
is involved with that? And
yeah,
what does that practically mean in your practice too?
So there are hundreds and thousands of us across the country that are certified. So if you go into IMHCA.com or integrative medicine for mental health.com, we're kind of like functional medicine practitioners, but specifically for mental health. So the Institute of Functional Medicine is another root cause based credentialing agency, but so is IMMH. And so it's very specific, focused on mental health conditions. And so doctors, therapists, counselors, and psychiatrists so we're all double board certified. So like an MD that goes through this program does all of their MD training and does the integrative medicine for mental health training. I went to Drake grad school, did all of my training, got my CRC, and did this training, which includes a lot of extra clinical hours working with clients and understanding. You have to basically kind of dedicate to being very holistic and natural minded and treating trauma naturally. And so integrative medicine for mental health actually includes everything. It is the bridge. So I love it because I get to fill in the gap where clients fall through. And so I get to work with my mental health colleagues. I get to work with standard MDs. I get to work with standard psychiatrists, but I also work with naturopaths, functional medicine doctors, shamans, different practitioners where because the modality is super cultural competent and it's evidence-based. Everything that we do is research-based. So where in the mental health model, we're using pharmaceuticals, I'm treating mental health conditions with amino acid therapy. What are amino acids? Has anyone ever had green tea before with L-theanine in it? So like for one of the medications that I take for OCD is L-theanine, but a higher dosage of L-theanine, which is kind of works like a benzo, but it's just a compound that's in green tea. So it calms you down pretty quick. So it's a blend of the traditional, it's a blend of the conventional, and it's a blend of complementary and alternative. So if you use it together with conventional medicine, it's called complementary. So it can be used with. So I have clients who medicate and meditate together. As one of my clients says, she made t-shirts. It's amazing. There's some t-shirts out there that say it's okay to meditate and medicate. I love it. And it's called alternative if it's used in place of. So some cultural, some individuals, it's not a cultural fit. It's not a value fit to use pharmaceuticals because they just wouldn't use it in their family system. They wouldn't use it in their culture. And so they, Des Moines has a large refugee population. I've talked with the Department of Refugee, with these types of treatments because it's just more a cultural fit. It enhances the treatment from the other disciplines because it is holistic. It's someone's spirituality. I'm talking about nutrition. I'm talking about all of these different areas. It accelerates the therapeutic results. So it works faster because mind and body are connected bidirectionally. It's culture inclusive. It's biochemically individual. So I'm working within someone's genome. I'm looking at their, if I have that information, I'm tailoring it to their genome. And it also addresses like chronic physical health conditions and mental health conditions. I'm also an environmental illness expert. So if someone has Lyme or mold or breast implant illness, you know, that's expressing itself as a mental health condition, we're going to investigate that. We have one of the top leading Lyme doctors in the whole entire country is in West Des Moines, Iowa. Like, that's amazing. So it's a whole body approach. It's holistic. It's a whole self-assessment, includes interdisciplinary, all the different fields. And so I'm building all of these bridges to all different specialties and fields. Collaboration, there's no competition with integrative medicine for mental health. We are like, what do you know? Who do you know? I'm going to call them. We're going to work together. We're building villages around people. We include nutrition. We do lab analysis and genomics. We're looking at someone's genome because methylation patterns, we need, I mean, that's a root cause of mental health. If those methylation patterns aren't supported, we're talking about self-care, and the healing relationship is front and center. It's very healing centered. It's trauma informed and healing centered. So it addresses circadian rhythms. So we're balancing out rhythms. Like bipolar disorder is commonly a circadian rhythm imbalance. And so I'm doing a lot of things around sleep-wake cycles in order to balance out the light and the dark cycles. We include nature, so ecotherapy, human and animal relationships, pet therapy. We include culinary medicine, supplements, herbal medicine, detoxification pathways, hydrotherapy, a lot of work with water. We talk about hormones. A lot of times it's a thyroid imbalance. It is someone's sex hormones. It's their, sometimes it's or maybe hypoglycemia that someone has. We include movement as medicine, otherwise known as exercise, but I don't ever use that word. We do somatics and body work. I use polyvagal, and I'm becoming a somatic experiencing practitioner. So it's very much somatics. Breath work is very much front and center of the work that I do. We include spirituality. I'm always talking about someone's spirituality. It's very integrated on that approach. We talk about altered states of consciousness. For everyone freaking out about psychedelics, if you're breathing today, you're on a psychedelic because breath changes our consciousness, scent changes our consciousness, coffee changes our consciousness, caffeine changes our consciousness. So it's not that much of a leap into psychedelics when folks are doing Wim Hof breath work and having transcendental psychedelic experiences off of breath work. And then we're doing a lot of motivational interviewing to make sure that how can, maybe I'm going through someone's daily schedule. And because I'm a CRC, I'm making sure that accommodations at work and school are there in order, like, because I am in like ADHD expert. So I'm making sure that like folks who are neurodivergent are accommodated as well, because integrative medicine for mental health doesn't work unless we include folks with disabilities. Because a lot of times they are left out of the conversation as to holistic mental health care. And then I'm also talking about bio-individuality, meaning what's your culture, what's your genetics, and how to make all of the protocols that I create are unique every single time that I work with someone. So every time I'm working with someone, an hour session, whether virtually or locally, I'm also spending at least another hour writing up their very specific prescription based on their story, their lived experience. It's different every time. So that's a little bit, it's a lot because it's truly holistic health, and it's just an integrated practice just all in itself. And it's beautiful. For me, it saved my life.
You mentioned that a little bit about how you integrate that into being a CRC. Mm-hmm. And for I think we have a few listeners who aren't professional counselors, so I just want to explain that a CRC is a Certified Rehabilitation Counselor. which means people often think that means drugs, working with drug rehab, but
And we do, yeah.
it's more focused on employment and helping people to gain employment, get jobs, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
And
I
it
mean,
may be more than that too.
yeah, a lot more than that.
Something to say about that, but the question that is in the chat is how that fits in with all of this, everything else that you've talked about.
Yeah, so I work with a lot of like entrepreneurs that have ADHD. And so a CRC is very holistic just in nature, because we work with individuals with physical and mental health conditions. And so with school and workplace and community, full integration, and we are dual-sided clinicians. So we work not only with the individual, but we also we're pulling folks out of the river, but we also swim upstream to make sure that we fix the systems that are harmed. And so that's where some of my consultation comes in. But when I'm working with like an entrepreneur that has ADHD, that maybe they have their own practice, because my number one client are doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists. And they're like, how do I make it work when I have ADHD? Like, how do I accommodate myself when I'm a small business owner, right? Because the ADA applies for a certain number of employees. But what do I do for myself? How do I do that? How do I self-advocate? How do I set up my business? Because that may be holding someone back. That may be the root cause of their mental health, is just like the stress of having to like work within a neurotypical box. And it's like, well, wait a minute, like, let's work with how things work for you. And so, yeah, I mean, people with disabilities, I basically have a private rehabilitation agency. I have to be included in wellness. I mean, yeah, I mean, they have to be included with wellness. People with disabilities experience the most amount of trauma when you think about just inclusion into life, and the most marginalized, they're multiply marginalized as far as like intersectional identities, right? So we have to make sure that when we talk about health and wellness, that we're including individuals with disabilities. And so when I'm talking about health and wellness with integrative medicine for mental health, I'm also talking about individuals with autism, individuals with autoimmunity, individuals with any sort of disability, because disability isn't about what the diagnosis is. It's how you are not included into society or workplace or your school. It's kind of the manifestation of not being included, because the barrier, it very much works on the social model of disability. The barrier is the environment, not the person. The medical model is what most of healthcare operates under. Also, healthcare operates under the person with the disability, or the person with trauma is the problem. The person with the mental health is the problem to be fixed by the expert. No, the social model of disability says the person is the expert, and the environment is the problem, and the environment needs to accommodate the individual. And so we still, even years and years after the social model of disability, after the disability rights movement occurred, after the civil rights movement, we have still not integrated the social model of disability. We still have not integrated it within our healthcare system, within the mental health care system. And mental health counselors sometimes don't know what to do with folks with disabilities. And so that's, again, another bridge that I'm building to include folks with disabilities into integrated medicine, into trauma-informed care, into, wellness. Trauma is a disability sometimes. Mental health. We don't think of mental health. If you're struggling profoundly in multiple areas of your life, mental health condition is under the ADA, you can be accommodated for. And so this is what CRCs are ninjas at.
All right, great. Well, thank you for speaking to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question before we wrap up, but Before I ask that question, I just want to point out that there have been several comments in the chat asking for resources, resource lists, or just lists of providers. And would you be willing to go through that when we're finished and respond to those questions in the chat?
So some resource of providers, that is going to come through a referral through me, because these providers are going to be, yeah, because they're too full. And so coming through me, you can look at the IMMH Integrated Medicine for Mental Health, or IFM, but again, I'm the only one on I'm the only one there. For clients that come through me, I always refer them to where they need to go. And it's going to be faster if someone comes through me, to get to where they need to go. Because right now, just like in the mental health world, the physical health world, everyone's full. And we don't have a published list of this. It's like I work within this group of Institute of Functional Medicine in Des Moines, and it's all of the root cause providers that we get together, and we don't have a list. I wish we had a list. We're all just like on an email list. And it's everyone in town you already know, probably.
Yeah. I guess what I was asking is, would you be willing to write in the chat the answer the questions in the chat?
Yeah, I'll go through the chat. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But my last question, you've talked a lot about the practices that you implement,
Mm-hmm.
and what you're doing, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to share the effects that these practices have had on people's lives.
I cry every day because I'm so humbled just to see how rapid clients heal. Clients will come to me and they will say to me, Shannon, I have worked with 20 providers in town, and this is the last thing I'm going to do. Like, I can't take it anymore. I can't take life anymore. And when they find me and I explain what we're about to do, they cry. They're weeping because they're like, finally someone is listening. And we figure it out, and we figure it out very rapidly. I'm very targeted in my approach, and I'm not territorial. I get them with every single other person in town that is available that can also serve them based on, like, oh, you're the expert at this. You're going to go and do this area. In town, I'm known as the person where if someone has complex mental and physical health conditions and the doctor or psychiatrist doesn't know what to do with the person, they send them to me and they end up being okay. The root cause gets addressed all of the time, every single time. And we figure it out because there are so many known root causes that we can address with integrative medicine, functional medicine, naturopath. And there's really great trauma therapists where clients are experiencing trauma and they're in talk therapy, right? So I'm like, oh, you're just not with the right modality. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you've been doing CBT, but you have CPTSD. And so now it's time to change up the modality. And so, or you need to be with an equine therapist and getting them, to that person. And so that I love that because it's so supportive, because we are serving the same clients. All of us are. We're serving the same clients. I don't care what your background is. If you're a CRC or an LMHC or a licensed social worker or a doctor or a psychiatrist, we are serving the same person. Humans are resilient. They're gonna go to this person to figure out what's going on, and get some answers. And so we're serving the same person. And so the more that we can work together and share expertise with one another, clients are going to be able to have their root causes addressed much faster. They're not going to have to search around for 15, 20 years to realize, oh, wow, it was my genetic pathways and a gluten intolerance. Oh, this was undiagnosed thyroid. Oh, I had a hormone imbalance. Oh, I was hypoglycemic. Oh, I didn't know I had ADHD. Now I have that diagnosed and I can accommodate that. Oh, I'm late diagnosed. I'm female and I'm late diagnosed autism. I didn't know that. And that's where all of the severe social anxiety is coming from. And also some of the gut dysfunction. And there's some things that we can do about that. Mhm.
Well, Shannon, thank you for taking the time. I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like to say to end this and to wrap things up.
No, I just want to thank everyone for coming on here, and every clinician and every root cause provider in town, because you have helped me. Our clients don't heal without one or the other. And Des Moines is the place to heal. Iowa is the place to heal because we work together. We're not territorial. We work together. We're really rooting for our clients, and we do everything that we can to really figure this out together. And I have never felt so much supported other than my colleagues. And so I just appreciate you so much. I am so grateful for my mental health colleagues, and I thank you guys for having me on. I love working together with you and playing the part that I can in our shared clients' lives. There's nothing like seeing our shared clients succeed and just go about life in the way that they choose to do so. And so I really appreciate you, especially during the pandemic, because this work is tough. And so I really appreciate you for just showing up and doing what you do every day. And let me know if you have other questions and things later that you have questions, just reach out to me, and I'm happy to help and educate. This work isn't about me. It's about, I don't want to hear another client saying, Shannon, I've been struggling for 15 years. I don't want to hear that. Like you, I don't want to even have to have this job. I'd be love to have like an earring shop or like an Etsy shop where I'm making cards, because none of us have to do this work. I love it. Let's make some jewelry.
Well, thank you, Shannon. Thank you for taking the time. I think the group would appreciate it if you put your contact information in the chat.
Okay.
So that they will be able to reach out to you easily. And yeah, I appreciate you coming by. I just want to remind the people who are still listening that this is this is the first in a monthly series of Facebook Live interviews through IMHCA. So look out for more of those coming up. And again, I want to remind that on March 7th is our day on the Hill, and April 20, let me look at my notes, April 20th to 22nd is IMHCA's annual conference. So yeah, come to those. And thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Sean, for having me on.
Mhm. All right.
Yay.